everyone, I'm here today to show you how I'm making surgical style masks for our local nursing home who is desperately in need right now. I should mention that we're all aware that the cotton masks are an absolute last resort measure. Also that these are to be ideally worn over an N95 mask, which then allows that mask hopefully to be used more than once. Some healthcare providers are being told that their N95 should be used for a week. That, that's a little problematic, I think. But anyway, let's get started. So there's a healthcare system out in the Midwest called Deaconess, and they have provided a pattern with which to follow. So I have that printed. I, started using this method, and then I ran into the problem where the elastic I was provided was not quite strong enough, and there may have been a better method to use, but I was just concerned about it. So I started to make them with ties, and the way that I'm making them is with t-shirts, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I start off with cotton fabric, and I guess first things first, I did make a pattern based on the instructions from Deaconess. So all this is brown craft paper that I got at Dollar Tree. You can also use a brown paper bag, just any kind of sturdy paper. Even if it was lined paper, it would probably be fine. But just measure that out if you've got a yardstick or ruler handy. And that's going to save you time as you make multiple masks. I'm hoping I can convince even one person watching to start making these, because our nursing homes are desperately in need of these masks right now, as well as our healthcare systems. Again, total last ditch, last resort to save these people from going in without anything at all. So the fabric I'm using is just a tightly woven cotton, like a quilting cotton, and I'm going to reiterate this again later, but I'm taking the right side, or the pretty side, and I'm putting that with the wrong side, or that faded side of the print. I'm putting it together as I sew, which usually you hear people say, put the right sides together. And the reason being, you want to have that pretty side usually showing on both sides. Well, here I'm doing it differently because I want there to be no doubt at all about which side is facing out and which side is facing back towards your nose and mouth. If these are going to be reused and sterilized every day, we've already gotten feedback that some healthcare systems have been issuing these masks, which I'll show you now, and that the nurses are being asked to turn them in at the end of the day and then getting a fresh mask the next day. So I tie it like so. And it may become a little bit difficult to understand me, but this is kind of the price you pay for a certain level of protection. I'm not tying this with a double knot right now, so but I just wanted you to get a sense for how tightly that can fit over the face. Again, this is not a substitution for an N95, and everyone knows, I hope you understand, that we are just, as the sewing community, coming together across the country, probably across the world as well, to really try to address this major need. So please, if you want to learn how to sew, watch this. I'll try to tell you as much as I can. So if you have t-shirts laying around the house that are in good condition, definitely pre-wash them, and pre-wash your fabric as well at a high heat. This is going to stimulate the conditions with which they will be sterilized by the hospitals and nursing homes, etc. So I've got my t-shirt here. It might be a little bit hard to see, but I've got it laid out. If you've got a yardstick, great, or a ruler, and you've got scissors, that's perfectly fine. You may want some kind of marking tool. But for me, I've got this rotary mat, which is awesome. If you're going to be sewing for any length of time, if you're going to commit to it, I recommend one. And I'm just going to follow the lines on my cutting mat to cut out a strip that is 2 inches wide. So I'm going to start here and go all the way across until I reach that corresponding line on the other side. So what that left me with is a tube. Did you know this? That your t-shirts actually are not sewn with side seams. So this is literally one continuous tube when you're wearing a t-shirt. So that's pretty cool to realize. Now I'm going to cut just one edge of this, and that's going to make it into a strip. Okay? Now, I'm not going to show you this at the iron, so I hope that this is somewhat easy to see, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold one edge to the halfway mark, okay? And then I'm going to fold the other edge to the halfway mark. Then I will fold the two together so that you've got a 1/2 inch strip, okay? And then there's a double fold on one side and a single fold on the other side. So let me show you what that looks like after it's been pressed. So it's kind of easy to use t-shirt material versus cotton, like a regular quilting cotton or whatever for your straps, because when you go to the iron, you can just literally kind of roll and fold as you go and take about 6 inches at a time. Use high heat on your cotton setting. Hit it with steam if you want. I got some thread there. But then this is what it ends up looking like. And there's the edge. So these are just great for the ties that go around the head. This is a great solution if you do not have elastic, but they are also in the original pattern made using about 7 inches of elastic, I believe, to go around the ear. I have heard from some people that, like, if a man is wearing the mask, that doesn't work as well. If his head is much larger, the elastic gets stretched too far. So, you know, there's many things to take into consideration. But let's go to the sewing machine and see this baby come together. So I'm going to take my cotton fabric here. I've also actually got a ton of these ties ready to go. Okay. So again, I'm going to take the right side, or the pretty side, and lay the wrong side, or the faded side, right over top of it. Typically, you would secure this with pins, so that's what I'll do. Although when I'm sewing, I tend to skip this step. So you would just insert your pin like so, and go all the way around, just so you can see that if you're not familiar with the pinning process. You come to your machine, and I won't show you how to thread the machine, because if you've got one, you can go on YouTube, just type in the make and model of your sewing machine, how to thread, and I guarantee you there will be several tutorials to watch that will take you step by step of how to thread your machine. I will mention that I'm going to start on a straight stitch. So that's setting A on my machine. And I'm going to do my length on this dial here as 2.5, so in between the 2 and the 3 setting. On my tension, which is located here on my machine, I'm putting it on a 3. Okay, so sometimes that gets really confusing to figure out. But we're going to start at the bottom edge, and I'm going to start in the center. This is because there will be an opening that I will later be turning out. I'm using the edge of my presser foot, which is this right here, as my guide. So I'm lining the fabric up with that foot. So I'll insert my needle using my hand wheel here. And you always want to make sure you've got your needle in the thread or the fabric before you start sewing. So go forward a few stitches with your foot pedal and then press your back stitch button. Could be in different places on your machine, but that's generally what it looks like. It's this little like U-turn kind of symbol. And keep going forward. Come to the corner. Make sure your needle is in the fabric as you approach the corner, and then you're going to lift the presser foot. There's a lever, an uptake that you'll flip up near the needle. And then I just turned my work or pivoted, and now I'm going to continue on. Again, using the side of the presser foot as my guide with that raw edge of the fabric. I'm going to get a little bit closer to the corner there. I apologize, this is probably not that easy to see, but hopefully you can kind of get the groove of it. I always keep my hands away from the front of the needle because, believe it or not, it is possible to sew over a finger. If you've watched Project Runway, you've probably seen them at one point or another do that. Now, another thing I want to mention is to remove your pins as you sew. I've got a magnetic pin cushion, so I just kind of like drop it and it lands where it needs to go. Coming around the last corner now, I would usually meet up with where I started stitching, but this time I'm going to stop about 2 to 3 inches away from that mark. Again, that's because I'm going to be turning this inside out. So I'm going to wiggle my hand wheel a little bit so I can get my work free. And then here is a thread cutter on the side of the machine that I like to use, but I also have thread snips, or just basically little scissors, that I can trim off those thread tails. Okay, so now it's time to turn this inside out, except for one more thing. It is a good idea to trim the corners. So you notice I did not cut into the thread there, the stitching. Leaving that be, have to be very careful not to get that. And I'm going to go around my work really quick and make sure that I captured all of the edges here. Nothing got missed. It's kind of my quality control. Always try to inspect your work as you go. Hopefully I can get the lighting a little better. Sorry about that. So now I'm going to insert my fingers into this opening that I've created. And like magic, I'm going to start pinching and I'll pull, keep digging in there, pulling out little bits. Okay, and now I'll stick my fingers in there again and start poking towards the corners. This does not have to be perfect. And when I say that, I mean it doesn't have to be perfectly pretty. We do need it to be secure in all of our stitching. Okay, so there it is with the corners out. Now we're going to be inserting some tucks, and this can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of, but you want to picture the short edge being broken into 3 sections. So there's the middle, there's 1/3 here, and 1/3 here. So what I'm going to do is just take that middle section and pinch about 1/2 inch. And for my sisters who may watch this later, we used to joke, can you pinch 1 inch on your belly if you had 1 inch of fat? And here we're pinching 1/2 inch. Back in those days, I could definitely not pinch 1 inch on my belly. But now that has changed. So I'm starting with the center tuck. I will be the first to admit I'm not really great at doing these tucks. So I often have to like kind of finagle around with it. Maybe let's start with the bottom third instead. Let me move my work up here so you can hopefully see a little bit better what I'm doing. But again, pinching 1/2 inch and then pinning. Coming to the center, pinching 1/2 inch. It's like a little fold or tuck there, and then pin. So you can see that coming together. And another pinch, and all my tucks are going in the same direction. This is going to help the side of the mask to really contour to the cheek area. And it really does, you know, it's not anywhere near of a tight seal like you would get on personal protective equipment like the N95 or anything like that. But it really does get a bit snug to the face, at least to my face. So again, here's 1/2 inch. I'm pinching and tucking, just going all the way around and doing this. Ouch, just stabbed myself with the pin, so that's always fun. It's kind of like a sewing badge of honor. Like, how many times have you stabbed yourself or cut yourself? So at this point, I would go to my iron and press these so that the tucks look a bit more crisp. Now you're going to kind of lose this when you put it around your face. Those tucks may not really like hold perfectly, but it's still like a nice aesthetic thing, and so I like to do that. Now I'm going to take 2 of the strips that I've created, and I'm going to find the midway point. So if I hold them up, I can see where the middle is. And then find those double folds. So I'll stick my fingers right there, or one finger I should say. Take one of these that's ready to go and put the mask right in that portion of the strap so that it's, I want to say perfectly enclosed. I'm sure it's not perfectly straight in there, but as secure as possible. You'll see I'm going to use zigzag stitches and plenty of them. And I'm not really too concerned about, again, how beautiful this turns out, because as I mentioned before, you know, one of our nursing homes is requesting 2,000 of these, and they're being requested in the hundreds by many other facilities. So right now, the name of the game is to make as many of these masks as humanly possible. And that can be really stressful as well, because, you know, if you're like me, you worry, and you want to meet your obligations that you've promised to people and that kind of thing. So it can be hard, you know, juggling work and family and mask sewing. So I just do my best. Oops, I forgot one thing. We're going to be switching to a zigzag stitch. So that on my machine is a C, and I think that's in many machines. I want to make sure my needle is up before I switch the stitch pattern. So I'm going to backstitch a little bit here, again pressing that button there, and then I'm going to go forward with my strap centered on the presser foot here. So I just guide it along, and at a certain point I'm going to come to that mask portion. And I'm going to really make sure to hold it together. So there's only one pin in here right now, so I want to make sure that I've really got that in there well. But watch the fingers. Okay, here we go. Make sure to remove your pins as you go. I shouldn't have gotten that close. So it gets a little tricky to get that out of there. Again, just make sure that's really in there. I'm going to stitch close to the edge of the strap here so that I'm really capturing as much of the mask as I can. Really making sure that's a secure connection, so to speak. And I'm just going to shift this over a little bit as I continue down the strap. Again, centering the strap on the presser foot. You can start to go a little faster. If you're anything like me, your stitches get a little crooked with time, but it's fun to go fast. What can I say? Pedal to the metal, because you get to push your foot pedal and it's just like driving a car. And I always say my favorite joke, I may drive slow, but I sew fast. S-E-W. So, let's get the other strap here. We're almost done. So these do take me about 15 or 20 minutes to put together. There are certain ways of doing it that will make it faster, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm only about 16 of these done so far, maybe. And again, if I can encourage any of you watching to start making these masks, I really hope that you will give it a shot. I do have some spare machines that I'm willing to loan out for, you know, your sewing adventures. And I have plenty of black shirts as well. Now I do want to mention that I pre-wash these, but every facility should wash them upon receipt. So just throwing that out there. Of course, you know, sanitation and that sort of thing is paramount. If you're interested in learning more about this effort, you can definitely join the Facebook group called Help for Healthcare Workers Delaware. Again, it's Help for Healthcare Workers Delaware. If you're not in Delaware, I recommend joining the group Sew the Curve Flat, which I think is based out of New York. As you know, New York is really getting the brunt of this right now in the U.S. and other areas as well, but it's been pretty alarming to see their numbers jumping. So now I've gotten to the end of the road. I'm just going to go over this portion once more. Jesse wants to say hi, I think. Do you want to say hi? I have to wash a spoon for him. There's always some little mom task. So anyway, I'm going to just hit this up with a second row of zigzag stitching, trim my threads, and then I'm done. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video and you can see that sewing is not all that complicated, and I don't know, that's about it. So until next time, rock on.